We know Ani best as the Bagratid capital, the Armenian Bagratid capital. And this capital existed in the 10th and 11th centuries. But in fact, Ani as a city, or as a settlement, probably existed since the Bronze Age. So this was already a settled site, probably in prehistoric times. And by the 5th century, it's already mentioned by historians. Ani formed part of historical Armenia, and already from the 7th century when it was occupied by the Armenian Kamsara Khan dynasty, and then when it was under Bagratid control, it became a majority Armenian city, and remained so until the succeeding centuries when different kinds of people, Seljuks, Georgians, Kurds, came and inhabited the city as well. One of the reasons I think it was continuously occupied is because it is protected so efficiently by natural features. On the eastern side of the city is the Huryan River, which lies in a deep gorge, and on the western side is a dry gully. The only vulnerable point is at the north, where the Bagratids eventually constructed walls. So it's a very well protected site. Another important aspect to Ani is the cave complex that is all around it. Ani is built on fairly hard upper layer of stone, and below it's soft, so you could make caves. In fact, there's a whole underground Ani that has yet to be explored. At its height, what we know is that Ani was a very large city. So in the 10th and 11th centuries, let's say around the year 1000, it had a population of at least 100,000 people. London had maybe 5,000 or 10,000, so it gives you a sense of how large it was. And with that came trade. During the Bagratid period, Ani played a strategic role as a trade station. This is important because it was also something of a buffer zone between the Abbasid world to the south and east and the Byzantine world to the west. And historians have traced trade routes through Ani up to the north into Trebizond. After the period of the Bagratids, Ani underwent a succession of different people in control, from the Byzantines to the Seljuks to the Kurds to the Georgians, and finally to the Ottomans. And during this time, when it changed hands, it wasn't a period of gradual decline. There were periods and moments of tremendous wealth in Ani. To give you the example of the Church of Tigran Honents, a church built in 1215 just on the edges of the city. This was built by an extremely rich merchant and decorated entirely on the interior with frescoes. A very lavish example of Armenian architecture, and testament to the kind of monetary wealth that a single patron, no less a merchant, could control in the 13th century. Another interesting note to make about the Tigran Honents church is that in its fresco decoration, it includes actual patterns of silk. We see on the eastern wall, in paint, a kind of replication of silk textiles. It gives us a precious sense of the contact that people there had with objects like silk textiles. The 14th and 15th centuries saw progressive decline at Ani, so much that the Catholicosate, the Patriarchate, left the city and went to Yerevan. So we do see a gradual diminishing of the city. It's no longer a trade city in this later medieval period, eventually to become only a small town, and now, of course, deserted. It is one of very few deserted medieval cities that we have. You can walk Ani and get a sense with just a little imagination of what it was like to live in a medieval city. It's one of the reasons Ani is so important. And for those who have been to Ani, they know it's also an incredibly beautiful site. From the high elevation of the citadel, you have expansive, majestic views of the rivers and valleys and plateau all around you. Ani is studded with monuments, and the term 1001 churches, while probably not accurate, gives a sense of how much the skyline is punctuated by standing monuments. We know best what's enclosed within the walls, but all around Ani are churches, bridges, monasteries, all kinds of structures that have yet to be explored fully and which are often in dire need of stabilization. I think Ani is central to Armenian identity for a few reasons. First, some of the most spectacular examples of architecture, Armenian architecture, lie within the walls of the city. And the second reason, I think, has to do with the fact that it is no longer part of the Armenian homeland, but just over the border in the northern eastern Turkey, in modern terms, extremely close to the modern international border between the Armenian Republic and the Turkish Republic. So if you are at Ani and you're at the Citadel, you can see Armenia and vice versa. And this is an incredibly poignant thing for Armenians both in the Republic and the diaspora. Ani was really central to historical Armenian lands. It's on what's called the Plain of Shirak, which formed what were central to Armenian territory. And all around Ani are monuments testifying to that. For someone untutored in Armenian history and culture, he or she wouldn't get a very good idea of its Armenianness from the signage currently posted at the site. I understand that's going to change, and that will be a good thing. Ani was an Armenian capital, but it also was a cosmopolitan place where people from many different cultures met, traded, worshipped, and lived. And we know that there are at least 6 languages in which inscriptions appear at Ani. So it's important for us to understand this city not just as an Armenian city, but as essentially a world city. And that's what makes Ani so dynamic. And hopefully archaeology will further reveal the diverse and dynamic nature of Ani.